I think the Vancouver Canucks had a great trade deadline. Was it perfect? No. But was it not bad? Yes, it absolutely was not bad. And I think the fact that I can go out there and say that a not bad result is good enough for me is kind of indicative of how Jim Benning had done these trade deadlines in the past. Like, I saw a lot of people when the Travis Hamonic trade was made. Okay, Travis Hamonic for a third. There were a lot of people memeing in my comment section saying, oh, if it was Jim Benning, he would have given up a second-round pick with Hamonic. Hamonic and a second for a third, because that's just how Jim Benning loved to give away draft picks like candy. He said to the media, no, we love draft picks, we love prospects, we want to get more of those, but he never got more of those. How ironic is it that you have yourselves a GM that makes one trade? One trade, you trade away an overplayed bottom-pairing defender for a third, and everybody rejoices and thinks that this guy's the messiah. You had yourselves such a positive reaction to the Travis Hamonic trade, and then some, and when you take a look at everything holistically, sure, the Canucks did not execute every move that they could have gone out there and tried to do. But, based off of what they did, I like it a lot. Let's review the Vancouver Canucks and their past few days heading into the trade deadline and their trade deadline activities themselves. Starting off, of course, with Travis Hamonic. We already talked about that at length. The previous video on the channel also talks about the backlash that Travis Hamonic received, so you can go ahead and watch that. But aside from Hamonic, the Canucks made another trade. They traded away a third, not the same third they got in return for Hamonic, but another third. It's the third from the Winnipeg Jets in the Nate Schmidt trade to the Toronto Maple Leafs for Travis Dermott. We made a video about this already. You can go ahead and check it out, but pretty much Toronto needed to free up the salary to get Mark Giordano, and plus that's a defensive spot that is being opened up as well. Dermott is younger than Hamonic. Dermott is arguably a little bit better than Hamonic. He's more mobile than Hamonic for sure, and he's more flexible than Hamonic due to being able to play on the left and the right. So 1 for 1 in a blender, because you removed a third round pick, it's traded in, traded out. Hamonic for Dermott, fantastic change. Unfortunately, though, those two moves were done the day before the trade deadline, so going over to trade deadline day, we also had ourselves the 2 other moves they made. One of them wasn't even really a move, it was a waiver claim. So, on trade deadline day, the Vancouver Canucks did, as we said, 2 things. Firstly, they claimed Brad Richardson off of waivers, which we did indeed talk about. We said this was a good move, because Brad Richardson, as a bottom 6 penalty kill defensive center specialist who's a lot older now. Can you believe it's been 7 freaking years since Brad Richardson played for the Canucks in 2015? Like, that playoff run against, not even a run, it was a playoff series against Calgary where they lost. That was Bo Horvat's rookie year. My goodness, time goes by way too quickly, but either way, Brad Richardson was here. He was always a pretty good defensive center, and now, with a lot more experience under his belt, he will be helping out this team as they head over to Colorado. You also had yourselves the Tyler Motte trade, which opens up a roster spot for Richardson to slot right in. He will be playing with Lammikko and Highmore, at least according to the morning line skate that we saw. Or, no, morning skate lines that we saw, something like that, yeah. And if Richardson is going out there playing with Lammikko and Highmore, I do like the defensive capabilities of that line. Obviously, Richardson is 37 now, and he hasn't really played all too much this season. It makes sense, though, because Calgary is a good team, but it would be nice to just see him go out there, pot a goal maybe every 7 or 8 games, and maybe just end off the season on a pretty good note as a prime Canucks penalty killer. That's kind of what I hope we see out of Richardson, while also seeing him share some of his experience and mentorship. Of course, there was also the Tyler Motte trade, which, I mean, I've talked about that at length already. Tyler Motte, my goodness, man. Seeing him playing with Barclay Goodrow is so weird. It's so strange seeing him on the Rangers, but you know what? If this guy goes out there and gets himself a Stanley Cup Finals appearance because of it, I'm not going to complain. Tyler Motte deserves the moon in the world, and I think everybody in Canuckland can kind of agree on that. But that was it from the Vancouver Canucks at the trade deadline. They didn't do anything aside from trading away Hamonic and trading away Motte. Acquiring Richardson on waivers is just a waiver claim. It's not really the same as a trade. But either way, let's go over what exactly the Canucks did not do and why I think that it's okay. I know a lot of people were kind of going out there saying, oh, they got to trade Miller at this deadline, get a whole bunch of futures, trade Boeser, get a whole bunch of stuff, trade Garland, trade Horvat, because he's apparently not that good of a leader, according to some people that I have been seeing. Let's go over some tweets as to what the Canucks apparently tried to do, but they weren't able to. This is what Rick Dhaliwal said on Czech TV earlier in the day. The Canucks did not ask Halak to waive his no-move clause yesterday because there was not enough interest. They also tried to move Tyler Myers, Tanner Pearson, and Jason Dickinson, but there were no takers. And to that I just say, darn it, you can't really go out there and expect everybody that you dangle in front of other teams to actually want the things you're dangling. It's not like NHL 22 where you can just go out there and see, okay, every single player I have has trade value, we can trade them for a 7th round pick. It's not really like that in reality, and so the fact that the Vancouver Canucks at least tried to move Myers, Pearson, and Dickinson, only to have nobody actually want them, I at least admire them for trying, but I also admire them for not pushing it. I admire the Canucks for not going down the Benning route. You know the thing that people were memeing about the other day? Oh, if it was Jim Benning, it would have been Travis Hamonic and a 2nd for a 3rd. Thank goodness this team didn't go out there try to spend any capital in order to free themselves of contracts that they didn't want. Halak, Pearson, Dickinson, Myers, apparently on the market, nobody wanted them. Let's move on. This is what Drance and Dhaliwal said. Halak was not asked to waive on deadline day, but he was willing to waive, and it wasn't particular where he got traded to. If he plays lights out in the next 4 or 5 games, his bonus cap hit grows to $1.5 million next season, and that's because there's the other clause where if he ends off the year with a .905 save percentage, he gets extra money. But his save percentage is so bad that I don't really think that it's actually possible. Either way, the fact that Halak was willing to waive now, instead of I don't know, a week ago? Oh man, it kind of frustrates you, doesn't it? But at the very least, we had ourselves that idea that, okay, nobody just really wanted this guy, so I guess you could go out there and say it doesn't really matter. Let's go over onto what John Shannon said about the other players that did not move. Not the Pearsons and the Myers, but the bigger names. Even by the end of the regular season, they will have a plan they will be executing with Boeser and Horvat and Miller. By draft time in July in Montreal, there are going to be aspects of this team we may not recognize. Now, what exactly does that mean? Boeser, Horvat, Miller, these guys didn't get traded yesterday. Are they still going to get traded? Well, hold your horses there, because according to Drance and Dhaliwal, no teams came particularly close to matching Vancouver's ask for Boeser, Miller, Schenn, and Garland. Vancouver did not feel the need or the pressure to trade them today. Why is that? Well, Miller, Schenn, and Garland all have extra years in their contracts. Boeser is RFA protected. Sure, he has that qualifying offer that's huge at 7.5, but he still has a level of protection that guys like Tyler Motte did not have, for example. Tyler Motte was the only slam dunk trade the team needed to make, because it was either A, you trade him away for whatever it is the market will give you for him, B, you let him go to free agency and you don't keep him, or C, you re-sign him to a contract that was reportedly being negotiated around the $2 million-ish AAV mark, which the Canucks would not be able to afford to do. It was very clear with Motte, you had to trade this guy, you couldn't let him go for nothing, you couldn't pull off a Verbata or a Hughes with this guy, you needed to get something. Unfortunately, many Canucks fans saw Tyler Motte as valuable of a guy to maybe get a 40-plus overall pick, but no, the market said 4th, and Alvin and co had to eventually settle and say, okay, fine, you're not going to give us a top 40 pick, we'll just take your 4th rounder instead. And so, good on them for being able to actually do the right thing and trade this guy away when all the other options were pretty negative for the outcome of this team long term. You can't be losing guys for nothing, and you can't be overpaying bottom 6 players like Jim Benning did. Because that level of security does not exist with Boeser, Miller, Schenn, and Garland, these guys are all actually capable of being traded towards the actual draft itself. This is what Frank Saravelli said about the entire thing. The best move the Canucks made yesterday, the trade deadline, was not backing themselves into a corner to make the wrong move. You allow yourself the chance to go into the offseason and open things up to 16 to 20 more teams who could have interest. Think about this. A New York Rangers team goes out there into the playoffs and they make the 3rd round. They lose 4-2 to the Pittsburgh Penguins, and while they're feeling good about their run, they still want more. All of a sudden, there's a bigger and more intense drive for this team to go out there and say, screw it, we were so close. We were 2 games away from the finals. Gosh darn it, we need to go out there and make a trade for a big-name forward right now to go out there and make sure that we get this done. Miller, we're going to get you now. No more crappy asking price of Niels Lundqvist and Will Coyle. We'll add on all the stuff that you want, Vancouver. And that's ultimately the biggest thing that I said the Canucks should not do, absolutely should not do in a Boeser or a Miller or a Garland or a Horvat trade or whatever, is settle. You do not need to trade these guys right away if you're not getting an offer that is sufficient enough, if you're not getting an offer that actually works. don't say yes just because you have the opportunity to trade them. Now, for Miller, I get it. He kind of played himself into being untradeable because he's so gosh darn good, but there's got to be a team out there, 16 to 20 potential more teams at the draft when the picks are solidified, when the cap and everything is not really all too much of a deal anymore because it's the offseason, that might be able to go out there and say, okay, well, Miller's fantastic. Let's shell out a whole bunch of assets for him. For Brock, this is the update from Elliot Friedman. There were teams that told Vancouver if you want us to trade for Boeser, we got to be able to talk to him about a contract. He's not sure if that ever happened. That's a lot more flexible in the offseason. That's a lot more of a accessible move once the draft comes along. Because there is no immediate desire for cap compliancy, you have yourselves a few months before you have to be salary cap compliant before the start of the 22-23 season. Plus the RFA rights and the qualifications, there is indeed a layer of security for Brock. So the Vancouver Canucks are not done. They will likely go out there and make some bigger moves at the draft. You gotta remember, JT Miller was a draft pickup too. That was not a trade deadline thing. And so, for all intents and purposes, the Vancouver Canucks did not go backwards with this trade deadline. Unfortunately, we had some years where under Benning you could say they did that. But this time under Alvin, absolutely not. Hamonic out, Dermott in, you have yourselves Richardson in, and Tyler Motte out as well. You're getting draft picks in the process, you're gauging the market in the process, you tried to trade away Myers, Pearson, all that, it didn't work, but okay, you can still try again later. And it appears to be that the Canucks have a plan for Miller, Horvat, Boeser, etc. Let me know in the comments, do you think the Canucks did a good job on Sunday and Monday, their trade deadline period? Do you think they did what they needed to do? Talk to me in the comments on your thoughts about where you think the Canucks should go next. I hope you enjoyed this video, Trolls 99, and bye.